why do the super groups keep breaking up?
Like they want to get into individual things on their own, or maybe they might want to get into other things besides music. You know?
Just recently, there has been buzz about the revival of the music legend Jimi Hendrix, with fans all over the world scrambling to be part of a musical golden age. In his time, Hendrix was quite a sensation, but it seems his works have transcended generations, bringing a new form of excitement to this generation. Talking about being forever young, the current revival of the legend's music has come with some weight, bringing with it a recognition that was never expected. Join us as we tell you all about it. Jimi Hendrix was born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November 27, 1942, in Seattle, Washington. His father gave him the name James Marshall Hendrix later on. Al Hendrix, his father, was a very important figure in shaping the kind of person Jimi was. His parents, Al and Lucille Hendrix, had an on-and-off relationship that was disorderly and complex. Al was a tough but devoted father and a blue-collar worker who had been through much suffering, including fighting in the U.S. Army during World War II. Lucille was a lovely, spirited woman with an alcohol addiction and a bad temper. Far from being a placid union, their marriage was acrimonious. They bickered endlessly, and Jimi, at an early age, knew the emotional effect that it had upon him. It greatly affected his life at home, and most believe that it was at least partly responsible for the raw, emotional intensity of his later music. Jimi was the eldest of 5 children, although not all of his siblings survived infancy or remained in the house. Due to his parents' financial constraints, Jimi kept changing addresses and at times stayed with his relatives or family friends when his parents were unable to provide for him. Al was also a presence in Jimi's life despite all the disruptions and became his guardian when he and Lucille parted ways in 1951. Lucille passed away in 1958 when Jimi was just 15 years old, and it shattered him. He had always adored her, even if she had been absent or inconsistent. Her death created a void that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Outside of music, Jimi's early career was a bit of a patchwork. After dropping out of high school, he had a brief stint in the military. In 1961, he enlisted in the U.S., joined the Army, and served as a paratrooper with the 101st Airborne Division. But the career path was not for him. He was usually found daydreaming, playing his guitar, or hanging around doing nothing, much to the frustration of his commanders. A parachuting accident injury gave him an out, and he was honorably discharged in 1962. His brief time in the Army brought discipline and stories, but most importantly, it gave him the certainty that he wanted to do something different and creative. After the military, Hendrix floated from one low-level job to another. He was even a janitor and a session musician for a short period. He was not an overnight sensation by any means. His early life was a struggle. He would struggle to survive, playing in small clubs, opening for other musicians, and sleeping wherever he could. But simultaneously, his passion for the guitar only grew stronger. He spent every available moment he had, practicing and refining his own style, interweaving the rhythm and lead guitar so that the sound was that of his own and his own alone. Musically, Jimi Hendrix took inspiration from a wide variety of sources. Growing up, he was fascinated by the blues and rock and roll music. Muddy Waters, B.B. King, and Howlin' Wolf ignited his soul. He was just as much a fan of Elvis Presley, and subsequently he had huge regard for guitarists Chuck Berry and Buddy Guy. Jimi did not simply imitate their styles, he studied them, dissected them, and seasoned them with his. He was also influenced by the raw energy of Little Richard's, which he would later incorporate, and by Curtis Mayfield's suave performance. These were the influences on his emerging vision of sound, rhythm, and performance. After leaving the Army, Hendrix began performing on the Chitlin Circuit, a string of theaters throughout the southern United States where blacks could perform during segregation. It was a tough business, with its late-night road hours, poor wages, and hard, grueling schedules. But it was also where Hendrix perfected his live craft. He traveled with the Isley Brothers, worked dates with Little Richard, and jammed with King Curtis, Ike, and Tina Turner, and others among the greatest R&B acts. They were a blessing. He discovered how to own the stage, about showmanship, and about reading a crowd. Although he was a sideman, Hendrix often stole the show with his amazing guitar solos and his melodramatic stage theatrics. But occasionally his approach didn't mesh with the stars he was supporting. He was too laid back, too uncontrolled. Little Richard once complained that Hendrix was trying to steal his thunder. His fortune turned when he relocated to New York City and started taking gigs as Jimmy James. He also had a band, the Blue Flames, and had gigs in Greenwich Village clubs. It was there that he caught the attention of Linda Keith, girlfriend of Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards. She was so taken by Hendrix's skill that she met him with Chas Chandler, a retired bassist from Animals who sought to establish himself in a career in music management. Chandler was impressed with Jimmy and arranged a trip for him to London to launch a solo career. But before he reached that pivotal moment of being catapulted into international acclaim, Hendrix was a man on a mission, playing anywhere and everywhere, experimenting with new sounds all the while. These pre-TV and superstar days were tough and rough, filled with breakups and breakouts. He was an artist building his game, not driven by fame but by sheer desire to play. Jimi Hendrix grew into a man poised to revolutionize the musical world forever. When Jimi Hendrix eventually burst into television and international stardom, his fate was mixed. His untrained brilliance, long nurtured in clubs and backroom jam sessions, was now suddenly catapulted into the harsh glare of commercial pressures, the scrutiny of the press, and the demands of an arriving fan base. What had started as a meteoric rise then became a roller coaster ride of tension and pressure, with battles, creative frustration, and struggles for dominance of his own music. When Jimmy relocated to London in 1966, he formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience with bassist Noel Redding and drummer Mitch Mitchell. The band was an instant hit in Britain, where he discovered fans more receptive to his exploratory playing than he did in America then. Chas Chandler and subsequently Mike Jeffrey managed him, and he signed with Track Records, founded by the Who managers. He signed with Reprise Records in America, who distributed his records and campaigned for mainstream success. These labels did much to place Hendrix records on record racks and on the radio, while managing release dates, promotional tours, and the ever-present need of delivering hits and chart positioning. His visibility on TV was a blessing and a curse. His legendary BBC performance and U.S. television guest spots, such as The Dick Cavett Show and The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, introduced millions to his charisma and psychedelic playing style. Network television executives often had him dial down his performance, play abbreviated versions of his songs, or even mime-sing a few songs. Jimmy, who detested choreographed planning and playing off of live energy, hated this. His legendary appearance on The Lulu Show, in which he disregarded the prescribed set list and played the unauthorized Sunshine of Your Love, got him suspended from the BBC. That act of defiance was typical of Hendrix, but it also marked the beginning of his ambivalent acceptance of mass consumer halls. The tension didn't stop at television. Hendrix, though a star, was never entirely in control of his own career. His manager, Mike Jeffrey, was notorious for prioritizing money over Jimmy's creative needs. Hendrix was booked for grueling tours, barely given time to rest or write, and was often kept in the dark about his finances. He was the face and voice of the movement, yet he did not have control over what was being done with his career in the background. Power struggles existed between him and his management, and even between his own band members. Despite the fact that the Jimi Hendrix Experience was so immensely popular with records like Are You Experienced?, Axis, Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland, his backstage existence was less intimate. Noel Redding did finally depart from the group in 1969, angered at being marginalized and shut out of the process of determining his own creativity. Apart from his own band, Hendrix collaborated with a lot of players. He jammed with Cream and Eric Clapton and departed from Clapton impressed by his blistering skills during an impromptu session at a London concert. He jammed with the Rolling Stones' Brian Jones, and later in his years, he jammed with jazz musicians such as Miles Davis, who was greatly impressed with Hendrix's tone, freedom, and force. He also jammed with Steve Winwood, bringing life to the lengthy live jam Voodoo Chili. These associations stimulated Hendrix's artistic spark. However, his ego, business politics, and the pressures of fame prevented him from maintaining deep, long-term collaborations. Along with the increase in his popularity came a lot of pressure. Hendrix was celebrated as the greatest guitarist of his generation, but there was a ginormous price attached to that title. Everyone, from his fans to record labels, needed him to make something new every single time, and the press encroached into his private life. His color also made him more compelling to his character. He was a black man fronting a rock band in a world that was inclined to want him to fit into soul or R&B tradition. Most African Americans at this point were perplexed by his music, which borrowed nearly everything from psychedelic rock, a genre with almost exclusively white players. Consequently, white listeners fetishized his appearance and image as well, often omitting to pay respect to the depth of his heritage. Hendrix found himself caught in the middle, trying to appeal to everybody while remaining himself. The original Jimi Hendrix Experience disbanded in 1969, and he joined a new band, Gypsy Sun and Rainbows, with former Army buddy Billy Cox on bass. The band performed at Woodstock, playing a set that included his famous fuzzy version of the Star-Spangled Banner. The performance hit the headlines, but the band as a group didn't last. Hendrix assembled another one immediately, assembling the Band of Gypsies with Billy Cox and drummer Buddy Miles. The band ventured into funk and soul, showing that Hendrix was looking to expand his music. Their live album Band of Gypsies was a success, but tensions were growing behind the scenes. The band was short-lived, lasting only a couple of shows due to internal problems and mounting pressure on Hendrix on a personal level. Drugs, exhaustion, and mounting legal problems eventually caught up with him. He was constantly on the move, documenting much on the road, and struggling with the impact of fame. He was arrested numerous times, such as in Canada, for possession of drugs, a charge that would have ruined his career, though he was acquitted. His health and morale were in decline. Friends observed that he was growing more isolated and wired, even paranoid at times. He had already begun to record his next album, First Rays of the New Rising Sun, but he did not complete it. The challenges of being Jimi Hendrix finally caught up with the man. Even as he still made wonderful music, much of it never to be released or completed, mired in court struggles over rights and ownership of management, despite his raw talent, there were people around him who wanted to get their share of him. He struggled to maintain his own vision amidst ravenous fans, record companies, and television production hunger for more of the show, but maybe not so much the music. As Jimi Hendrix's popularity grew during the late 1960s, so did his use of drugs and alcohol, which would become a constant shadow over both his professional and personal life. Hendrix experimented with an enormous range of drugs, even alcohol, and frequently in combination. What had begun as a recreational pursuit quickly became a means of dealing with the stresses of fame, heavy touring schedules, and artistic pressures. The impact of these drugs was colossal. Even though Hendrix remained musically imaginative and expressive, his professionalism as a performer began to decline. Performances would at times be slowed down or halted, and there were performances that were shortened because he was unable to perform on stage. He would, on other occasions, seem distant, spaced out, or too unpredictable. Associates observed mood and energy shifts, and the consistency of his live shows was mostly moments of brilliance, alternated by confusion or incoherence. Sessions in the studio were hit or miss, and although Hendrix was still remarkable, he would occasionally not show up at all or get distracted on the record. His interpersonal relationships were no better. While Hendrix had a commanding stage presence and could easily draw people to him, the same people would find it difficult to connect with him on an emotional level. He also had a troubled love life where jealousy, misunderstandings, and emotional ups and downs were fueled by his drug use. Managers, band members, and friends found him increasingly hard to manage. As a human, Hendrix was sensitive and introspective, but drugs and alcohol seemed to awaken the insecurities and alienation. He would always complain about not belonging, even when he had admirers and well-wishers about him. The circumstances of Hendrix's death only served to deepen the tragedy in his life. In the early morning of September 18, 1970, he was found in a coma in Monica Dannemann's London apartment, his girlfriend. Paramedics were called, but Hendrix was pronounced dead at the hospital. Officially, his death was attributed to asphyxiation from vomit resulting from barbiturate poisoning. It was later discovered that he took 9 Vesparax sleeping pills, well above the recommended dose, and downed them with red wine. But the events surrounding his death have remained shrouded in mystery, and a variety of theories have been spun. His death has been considered by some to be a death by accident, a tragic consequence of his growing dependence on drugs and his practice of taking drugs randomly. But others, even his own friends, have doubted the cause of his death. Monica Dannemann's contradictory stories and inconsistencies over the years have led some to take the perspective of murder or neglect. More pronounced, though, was a theory put forth by James Wright, a seasoned roadie who traveled with Hendrix, claiming that Hendrix's manager confessed to the murder on his deathbed out of pecuniary motives, though this also remains unconfirmed. Regardless of what the truth may be, Hendrix's death at 27 put him in the ranks of the infamous top musicians who passed away at that age in a premature and tragic fashion. His death not only marked the end of a short but revolutionary career, he also left behind unanswered questions, emotional destruction, and a void that could never be filled. Jimi Hendrix's legacy is still profoundly influencing the music scene, with the year 2025 being identified as the one in which huge milestones are to be celebrated for his ageless legacy. It was this March that the Experience Hendrix Tour went out in earnest, providing an energetic tribute to Hendrix's unmatched greatness. This definitive multi-artist tribute album, 5 years in gestation, kicked off a 27-date North American tour on March 11th at the Taft Theater in Cincinnati and concluded on April 12th at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. The tour had music stars, legends, and newcomers alike, reminiscing on Hendrix's ageless works. Among the biggest stars that participated were Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Marcus King, Christone Ingram, Eric Johnson, Samantha Fish, Devon Allman, and Zakk Wylde, to name just a few. They were not covers but interpretations that were about the scope and expanse of Hendrix's music. To illustrate, psychedelic Southern rock soul-influenced musician Marcus King spoke about how he admires Hendrix and his playing style. Its success was marked by sold-out performances and excited fans. The 28th, at Westbury Music Fair, made use of the circular stage arrangement to provide an intimate environment, with the audience calling the concert a half-divine affair with the spirit of Hendrix. The March 20th show at Murat Theater in Indianapolis was promoted as the guitar event of the year, as a tribute to the relevance of the tour in making Hendrix's music contemporary and relevant. Apart from the tour, Hendrix's legacy was also honored during the unveiling of a memorial statue in Seattle City, his place of birth, in March 2025. The award is proof of his legacy's continued impact on society and music. It also marked the city's pride for their son and his musical success in the world of music worldwide. The Seattle statue and Experience Hendrix Tour are both tributes and confirmation of the lasting legacy left for us by Hendrix. They both show him as a beacon to generations of artists and fans to come, as proof that his legacy of out-of-the-box thinking continues to interface with the lives of artists and followers all over the world. We hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to check out our other videos, and we will see you in the next one.